the crown prince of Beijing's elite circle, Bruno, had one unspoken rule. He could keep mistresses, indulge in whatever wild thrills he wanted, but none of it could ever cross my path or step foot into our marital home. Yet, eventually, he allowed his latest fling to appear before me, again and again, even on the anniversary of my mother's death. He brought her back into our house, the day I left. I left behind a long, detailed will. Bruno was forbidden from attending my funeral. He was forbidden from burying my ashes in the family cemetery. I had the media live broadcast the miserable state of my life and death. I wanted to see it clearly, how the rose he once flaunted to everyone would wither in his hands. Chapter 1. I wrote down a number in my diary, 3, then circled it heavily in red. 3 years of marriage. This was the third mistress Bruno had found, and the first one to dare appear before me. Just as I was locking the diary away, a knock sounded at the door. Alice walked in, wearing the standard secretary uniform and large black-rimmed glasses. "Madam, Mr. Bruno asked me to come fetch a new tie." She stood timidly in front of me, looking meek and obedient, but through the open button of her white blouse, I caught a glimpse of scattered crimson love bites. As I stood to retrieve the tie, I happened to notice her black stockings, ripped in a way that could hardly be called an accident. "I'm sorry, madam, I was careless," Alice quickly said, trying to hide the torn stockings with her hands. I snagged them while getting out of the car. Her eyes turned red as she spoke, her helpless, fragile appearance nothing short of pitiful. Chapter 2. I said nothing and simply handed her the tie. Alice accepted it submissively and quickly left. An hour later, a message arrived from that overseas IP account again. "Today, Mr. Bruno and I unlocked 2 new locations, the CEO's office and the backseat of the Bentley van. Mr. Bruno must really enjoy the thrill of doing it in the office. We went at it 3 times. You probably saw it, right? My stockings were torn by him. We tried a new position in the van. I didn't like it very much. It hurt a little, but Mr. Bruno really enjoyed it. He said we'd do it again tonight. Madam, I'll report back to you again this evening." Chapter 3. I put down the phone, and it took a long moment before I stiffly turned to look out the window. The garden in the afternoon sun looked lazy and still. In the distance, on a large stone by the lake, were 2 carved characters, Song Garden. Beneath them, in smaller handwriting, was a line personally penned by Bruno. "To dwell in the Song Garden with Helen, for a lifetime of happiness. I am Helen, Bruno's wife, the girl he vowed to marry when he was just 7 years old, promising to build her a golden palace. He didn't break his promise. Later, when he married me, he gave me the Song Garden, valued at 1 billion yuan, as a wedding gift. In Beijing, everyone knew Bruno cherished his wife as his very life. I was his forbidden reverse scale. No one was allowed to touch me. He flaunted it proudly everywhere. Helen was the rose he had nurtured since childhood, stunning and unmatched, irreplaceable. But now, I lowered my head and let out a cold laugh, wiping away the tears that had long gone cold. I got up and headed to the bathroom. After undressing, I carefully recorded every birthmark on my body, the shallow dimple on my lower back, the vermilion mole behind my neck. Then I sent an email. The reply came quickly. "Madam, we are completing the files based on the information you provided. Please be patient." Each message was automatically deleted after being read. I took a shower, napped briefly, then received a call from Bruno. He wanted to take me to a new private restaurant that evening. When I arrived, Bruno personally came out to greet me, his assistant, driver, and secretary trailing behind. Alice was there too, still wearing her inconspicuous secretary outfit, blending quietly into the crowd. Chapter 4. My wife. "You look stunning tonight," Bruno said with a smile as he came forward to hug me. Even after we were seated, he didn't spare Alice a single glance. The whole table was filled with dishes I liked, but staring at the man across from me, everything tasted like ash in my mouth. "Is it not to your liking?" Bruno frowned, then got up from his seat. "I'll go check in the kitchen to see if they have anything new." He gently squeezed my shoulder. "Wait for me just a moment, sweetheart." But once he left, he was gone for a full hour. When he finally returned, His tie was slightly crooked. The hem of his shirt was wrinkled. And there was a dark wet stain around the zipper area of his black trousers. He wore a slightly annoyed expression. A server spilled wine all over me. Completely ruined the mood. There were no new dishes. Just the same old stuff. Honey, why don't we go somewhere else? I shook my head. I'm full. Let's go home. As we left, I spotted Alice again among the crowd. Her head was bowed low. As inconspicuous as ever, but this time, her lips were swollen, and her lipstick was smeared. Her stockings were also gone. Once I got into the car, the little burner account messaged me again. Mr. Bruno couldn't hold back. We unlocked a new location just now, the private room right next to yours. Did you hear anything, madam? It's a shame. Really, there wasn't enough time. And Mr. Bruno wasn't fully satisfied. Do you think he'll come looking for me again tonight? Chapter 5. When I stepped out of the shower, Bruno was sitting on the couch, looking absent-minded. My love. He stood up, guilt written all over his face, hesitating as if he didn't know how to start. Is it something urgent at work? I naturally handed him an excuse to step on. Yeah, something a bit urgent, but it's nothing serious. He said this as he sat back down. Besides, it's been so long since we spent real time together. I leaned against the vanity table, smiling faintly at him. Save it for my mother's death anniversary. Be there for me then. A tender sorrow immediately flickered in Bruno's eyes. Of course, I'll take time off and go with you to Switzerland. All right? I looked at him, a man nearing 30, yet even more handsome and steady than when he was young. When he looked at me, his eyes were full of me, even more intensely passionate than in his youth. I almost couldn't suppress the cold sneer rising to my lips. All right, you better hurry now. Don't keep them waiting. Reluctantly, Bruno left, but the speed of his footsteps down the stairs was anything but reluctant. I walked to the French window, watching as his car sped off. Before long, a message from Alice arrived again. Mr. Bruno was in such a rush. He didn't even bother with protection. But honestly, it felt completely different. Madam, it seems like your husband already belongs to me now. Chapter 6. Honestly, over this period, I had more than enough time to digest everything and face it with calm. But at this moment, Alice's words still managed to shake me. I sat on the bedroom carpet, my whole body trembling uncontrollably. My right index finger unconsciously dug into the flesh of my thumb, leaving deep nail marks without feeling any pain. My stomach churned violently, gagging but unable to vomit anything out. I clutched the bed frame to stand up, feeling dizzy and disoriented for a long while, then swallowed a handful of pills. It took a long time before I barely managed to steady myself. I dialed that number again. Miss, is something wrong? The man answered quickly, his voice deep and calm, carrying an inexplicable, comforting power. Could I trouble you to move the plan ahead of schedule? When would you like to move it up to? After my mother's death anniversary. Would that be possible? The man fell silent for a moment. Miss, I will do everything in my power to meet your request. Thank you very much. Chapter 7. I saw Alice again at a corporate cocktail party. When I arrived, Bruno was mercilessly scolding her. Clumsy, can't do anything right. Get out of my sight. Everyone around looked at Alice with a bit of sympathy. Bruno's assistant leaned over and whispered to me, Ma'am, you have no idea how much the boss hates that intern secretary. She's useless at work, clumsy, plain-looking, utterly worthless. I smiled faintly. Then why not just fire her? The assistant was taken aback. He remembered someone had mentioned firing her before, but the boss seemed to have refused. He was about to explain when Bruno spotted me and quickly walked over. Did I scare you, honey? I rarely lose my temper at employees, but that secretary is just too hopeless. I looked at him and smiled lightly. She's a newcomer. You just have to teach her patiently. Bruno snorted coldly. Not just anyone can be my secretary. I'll fire her after the new year. I said nothing more and glanced toward Alice. She stood among the employees, completely unremarkable. When she caught my gaze, she quickly lowered her eyes, biting her lips with frustration. Halfway through the event, Bruno took me to the lounge to rest, then hurried away. Soon, Alice's secret account sent me another message. Madam. End of the hallway. Restroom. Want to come? Chapter 8. The entire floor was quiet. Bruno had ordered no one to disturb me, which only made it easier for him and Alice. Through the ajar door, I heard Alice's low whimpers and moans. The sounds of spanking, vulgar curses, and obscene insults filled the air. It was a side of Bruno I had never known, vile and filthy. Sir, please. I can't take it anymore. Only Bruno's cold, harsh growl answered her. Suck it up. Mr. Bruno, please be gentle. You? Worthy of that? Bruno chuckled darkly. I only pamper my wife. Women like you are nothing but trash for me to use. Then go to your wife. Stop touching me. Alice sobbed. Bruno grabbed her by the hair, forcing her to lift her face. Her voice grew muffled, choked. Alice, if you're going to be the mistress, you'd better learn to act like one. Don't you dare mention my wife again. You're not even fit to carry her shoes. Then stop touching me. Don't do this to me. You tell me not to touch you, but you come on to me half naked. Aren't you filthy? Mr. Bruno, I really can't take it anymore. Please. Your wife is just next door. She might hear us. The crying suddenly grew louder. Then keep your damn mouth shut. Alice's voice weakened again. I turned away and returned to the lounge. Nearly an hour later, Bruno came back, his face full of fake guilt. Bruno. I called him, my voice calm. The day after tomorrow is my mother's death anniversary. Come with me to the mountains to visit her. My mother had adored Bruno when she was alive. She only closed her eyes peacefully after placing my hand into his. Now, I no longer wanted him. I needed to tell her. It wasn't my fault. It was him who became filthy. He wasn't worthy. Chapter 9. When I was crying in front of my mother's grave, Bruno also shed tears. Just like every time we came to pay respects, he solemnly vowed. He swore he would love me forever, that he would always treat me well. But it didn't stop him from answering a call and needing to leave immediately. Honey, I'll pick you up early the day after tomorrow. The situation back there is urgent. I really have to be there. Be good. All right? It's almost New Year's. This year, I'll take an early holiday to spend it properly with you. Okay? I lowered my head, arranging the white chrysanthemums to place before my mother's grave, one word at a time. I asked him, it's already late at night. Is it really necessary for you to leave now? Bruno hesitated for 2 seconds, but still nodded. I'm sorry. Helen, it's really urgent. You know, all my hard work is for our family. I promised mother-in-law I'd make you the happiest, most envied wife in the world. Helen, I can't break that promise. I stood up holding the bouquet, taking one last deep look at him. He was checking his watch. Between his tightly furrowed brows, I could see his restless impatience. Go then. Wait for me. I'll be here early the day after tomorrow. He stepped forward and hugged me tightly. Before I could push him away, he quickly turned and left. At 1 a.m., a message arrived from Alice's secret account. This time it was a picture. The stone engraving at Song Garden, the main residence where our wedding home was, the master bedroom that occupied the entire second floor, and the wedding photo of Bruno and me above the bed. My pillow was thrown onto the floor. Bruno was sleeping with his hand resting on her chest. That so-called prestigious Song Garden, not that special after all. I'm already inside Song Garden. How many more rules do you think Mr. Bruno will break for me? I still didn't reply. At that moment, my phone rang. The man's voice on the other end was calm and rich. Miss, everything is ready. You can leave Beijing forever. Chapter 10. Bruno ordered the butler to gather all the servants at Song Garden. Madam will be back tomorrow. Whatever happened these past 2 days, keep it buried inside. You've worked at Song Garden for 4 years. You should know how much I love Helen. That's why I don't want some drunken mistake to be brought up in front of her and ruin our relationship. Everyone kept silent, hastily nodding. Only then did Bruno seem satisfied, waving them away. Alice came down from upstairs, still wearing Helen's nightgown. Bruno frowned. Who told you to wear my wife's clothes? Take it off. Alice smiled nonchalantly. Sure, I'll take it off. She loosened the sash, letting the robe fall to her ankles. Underneath, she wore nothing but a full set of lingerie. Unsurprisingly, Bruno's expression changed. Alice grinned smugly and walked down the stairs, straddling his waist. "Do you like it?" Bruno's breathing quickened just as he pinned her under him. His phone rang. He hung up without even glancing at it. But the phone rang again almost immediately. Alice reached over, silenced it, and tossed it aside. The stone engraving at Song Garden silently witnessed the filthy scene unfolding in the living room, until Bruno's assistant rushed over, his face full of panic. He stood outside the door, visibly desperate. "Mr. Bruno, we just received a call." "Madam, something happened." Bruno pushed Alice aside and sat up. "You say another word of nonsense, and see what happens." Bruno let out a cold laugh. He picked up a cigarette from the coffee table and lit it. He tossed a blanket toward Alice, but then irritably yanked it back. Get out now." Alice was stunned, wanting to say something more, but the assistant was already choking up with tears. "It's true, Mr. Bruno. It happened just an hour ago. Madam's car fell off a cliff. It was a severe crash. The fuel tank exploded, and the whole vehicle burned down." The cigarette between Bruno's fingers froze. His face turned pale, his voice hoarse like a ghost. "What did you say? Say it again." "Damn it, Mr. Bruno. Madam is dead. Before she died, she made one last call to me. She said you wouldn't pick up. She asked me to tell you she won't be coming back to Song Garden." All sounds around Bruno seemed to vanish. The whole world fell into a terrifying silence. The cigarette slipped from his fingers, burning a hole through the lace tablecloth. He shakily crushed it out, leaving only ashes, scattering like smoke. Chapter 11. The car raced along the road at full speed. After the heavy rain, the sky was crystal clear. The road winding through the mountains was narrow and twisting like a sheep's intestine. Bruno leaned back in the rear seat, motionless, like a clay figurine. The accident site had already been sealed off by the police for further investigation. When he arrived, he wasn't allowed to approach. At the same time, Helen's long letter left at the mountain villa had already been made public. Bruno first learned about the letter and its contents through a mysterious live broadcast. Helen had forbidden him from attending her funeral. She had forbidden him from burying her ashes in the family cemetery. She had forbidden him from meddling in any of her affairs after death. Everything related to her, in life and death, would have nothing to do with him ever again. She had also entrusted others to auction off Song Garden, with all proceeds donated to women and children's charities. She had withdrawn her personal seal and begged the board to honor the late old master's will, to appoint another to inherit the family business. Years ago, Bruno had knelt beside the old master's sickbed for an entire day and night, finally securing his blessing to entrust Helen's life to him. Originally, the old master's preferred candidate had never been Bruno, the inconspicuous fourth son among the family descendants. It was only because of the childhood bond between Helen and Bruno that the old man eventually relented. Perhaps for this reason, the old master had left a strict will. The next heir to the family business could only be Helen's husband. Along with the letter, surveillance footage from inside Song Garden was released. All the security systems at Song Garden had been handled by Bruno's men, yet he had no idea when Helen had secretly installed new hidden cameras. From the first floor of the main building to the second floor master bedroom, everything was recorded. Every sordid moment between him and Alice was exposed to the public without a shred of reservation. The image he had built for 3 years, that of a devoted, loving husband, collapsed in an instant. The social outrage this would provoke could easily be imagined. Bruno's phone kept ringing incessantly. The phones of his assistant and driver rang non-stop. As if under siege, Bruno stood outside the car, expressionless, and casually turned off his phone. Mr. Bruno, his assistant, drenched in sweat, rushed up. Madam's letter has caused an enormous scandal. It's a PR disaster. Public relations is still waiting for your response. But it was as if Bruno heard nothing. He simply stared blankly at the burnt-out frame of the van, until the rescue workers carried out the body. Only then did his eyelids twitch slightly. Without a second thought, he charged across the police line, rushing straight toward the stretcher. The scene descended into chaos. Several police officers blocked Bruno's way, preventing him from approaching. "I must see my wife's body with my own eyes." Bruno, eyes bloodshot, gripped the officer's arms tightly. refusing to back down an inch. Chapter 12. But in the end, he still couldn't see my body with his own eyes. In my will, I had clearly written, whether in life or death, he and I would never meet again. Yet Bruno still went to great lengths to obtain my autopsy report. He said he was my husband, my one and only man. He knew every inch of my body, every tiny detail, better than anyone else in this world ever could. At first, he managed to stay composed, but when he saw the photos, my disfigured, charred remains, and recognized the red birthmark at the back of my neck, the shallow dimple on my lower back, the crescent-shaped scar on my left index finger, and even the tiny mole above my heart, Bruno's emotions finally collapsed completely. At the same time, on the giant screen before him, the non-stop livestream titled Helen's Last 24 Hours was still playing. It was revealed that the reason I crashed my car was because Alice had been relentlessly bombarding me with messages. I had wanted to drive back to Beijing to find him, to demand an explanation. That's why I left alone. Why I lost focus and, in a moment of distraction, crashed through the guardrail and tumbled down the mountain. When the car fell, there was no immediate explosion. I woke up from the initial blackout and the first call I made was to him. But he didn't answer, because at that exact moment, he and Alice were tangled together in the living room downstairs. Later, the car exploded. Trapped inside, I perished in the explosion and fire. The surveillance footage had clear date and time stamps, perfectly matching the timeline of the accident. The live stream went viral. Public outrage reached a boiling point. It was late at night, but crowds had already gathered, blockading the Zhou Corporation's headquarters. Outside Song Garden, the noise of angry protesters also grew louder and louder. At that moment, someone revealed the countless acts of kindness I had quietly carried out over the past decade. Every year, I donated millions to rescue lost and homeless women and children. I personally worked with civilian rescue groups, helping 6 kidnapped children reunite with their families. I sponsored 300 impoverished children from mountain villages, year after year, never missing a single season. On the screen, scenes captured secretly by volunteers and beneficiaries were now playing in a loop. No fancy clothes, no heavy makeup, only earnest dedication, hard work, and sincere smiles. Surrounded by children, I smiled with warmth and grace, and in brutal contrast, the car lay in ruins, exploded and burned to ashes at the bottom of the mountain. My mangled body, half reduced to charred remains, was shown without censorship. I truly had been the peerless Rose Bruno once boasted of to everyone. But now, that rose had withered, rotted, and died in his hands. How would he face the ending he had created? Chapter 13. The board of directors quickly made their decision. They would respect the will left by the old patriarch and Helen. The head of the corporation would only, and could only, be Helen's husband. Thus, Bruno would be expelled from the board and completely lose all inheritance rights. But Bruno refused to hand over Helen's official seal. Helen is my wife, he said. She was mine in life, and she remains my late wife in death. I, Bruno, will only ever have one wife in my lifetime. Now that she's gone, I will never remarry. Before him sat an exquisitely crafted urn. His hand rested gently on it, stroking it over and over again. This lifetime, I will live guarding Helen's ashes. I will never give you her seal. And as for the company, he sneered. Grandfather said it himself, the company can only be entrusted to Helen's husband. Facing the crowd before him, Bruno laughed coldly. If you want to take it from me, fine. Let Helen come tell me herself. Bruno, you know Helen is gone. Moreover, her will clearly stated everything. Are you going to betray her final wishes and leave her spirit restless? Bruno clutched the urn tightly to his chest. As long as we are still legally married, none of you have the right to take her seal. The board members exchanged anxious looks, but no one could force his hand. Just then, Bruno's assistant suddenly burst into the room, pale as death. He held up his phone, visibly shaken. Mr. Bruno. The assistant's voice was hoarse. Just now, Leo, the CEO of Suiyuan Group, sent you a lawyer's letter. Bruno stood up abruptly. Leo? I have no conflict with him. Why would he send me a lawyer's letter? It's regarding Madame Helen. They claim that a month ago, Madame already entrusted her lawyers to file for divorce against you. Moreover, they have her official seal and the will the old patriarch left for her. Bruno's pupils contracted sharply. Impossible. The seal was always in my study's safe. He had just checked it that morning. The seal was still there. Mr. Bruno, the assistant said grimly. Madam took the real seal a month ago. What's left in your safe is likely a fake. Bruno's bloodshot eyes fixed fiercely on his assistant. Helen had arranged everything long ago. She had known about him and Alice for a long time. From the very beginning, that bitch Alice had probably been planning to expose their affair. Where is Alice now? Bruno practically ground the name out through his teeth. The assistant shook his head. She disappeared the day Madam had the accident. The company can't reach her either. She never returned to her rented apartment. Find her. Dig 3 feet into the ground if you have to. Find Alice. Mr. Bruno, the assistant said with despair. Right now, your priority should be deciding how to handle this scandal. He lowered his head and added, I've heard. Second young Master Dominic has already flown back from abroad. Bruno's half-brother. The two had been enemies since childhood. Their mothers' bitter rivals locked in endless battles. If Helen hadn't chosen him back then, Bruno would never have stood a chance against Dominic, the cold, ruthless, and decisive second son. Years of smooth sailing had made Bruno arrogant and careless. He had completely forgotten the suffocating days when he was suppressed, powerless, and humiliated. Until now, as the nightmare returned, he was finally forced to confront the crushing despair of being surrounded on all sides. But it was too late. There was no going back anymore. Chapter 14. The private jet landed on an unnamed island. As the staff guided me down the air stairs, I immediately spotted a man standing not far away. Several assistants, all respectful and deferential, stood behind him. The wind on the open-air runway was strong, causing the hem of his trench coat to flap loudly. The open coat revealed a matching shirt and black trousers underneath. He looked slim yet tall and elegant. A faint guess stirred in my heart, but I dared not be certain. Could the person who had been contacting me via phone and email really be this young and handsome? Miss Olivia, that's Mr. Leo, the staff member next to me said softly. Mr. Leo personally handled every step of your plan. I stopped in my tracks. Mr. Leo? The Leo from the Suiyuan group? The staff member nodded with a slight smile. Exactly. I couldn't help but feel astonished. In the circles of Beijing society, Suiyuan group belonged to an entirely different league. Having thrived for over a century, its roots ran deep. Even Bruno's family could only look up from a distance. Thinking back now, it made sense. Only the Leo family would have the power to pull off something as monumental as this. So this private vacation island? I asked. Mr. Leo said you are the first guest. It's a complimentary reward for you. The staff member explained. For the next year, this island belongs entirely to you. You can enjoy your time here without any concerns. After speaking, the staff directed the workers to move my luggage. Meanwhile, Leo was already walking toward me. I suppressed the wave surging inside me and greeted him politely with a nod. Leo extended his hand toward me. Miss, a pleasure to meet you. I'm Leo. Helen. I offered my hand, and he gave it a gentlemanly, light shake before releasing it. I've had all the island's facilities thoroughly inspected, he said calmly, and security is guaranteed. You can rest completely assured. Leo's voice, just like over the phone, was calm and composed. Of course, if you ever get tired of staying here, you can use your passport to travel freely to nearby countries for vacation. Mr. Leo, isn't this too extravagant? I asked uneasily. After all, I had only paid $1 million. Leo chuckled softly. Miss Olivia, you are my very first client. Your successful case means a great deal to me. Since things had come to this, I decided not to overthink it. After all, the prestigious Leo family stood behind it all. I doubted they had any need to squeeze anything more out of me. Then I shall respectfully accept your generosity. Mr. Leo, I said with a smile. I hope you enjoy your vacation. Leo replied. I couldn't help laughing. If Mr. Leo can win my divorce case faster, I'll be even happier. Leo gazed at me deeply. Rest assured, I will do everything in my power. I'll be waiting for your good news. I said. Chapter 15. The good news came even faster than I had expected. The The pressure from public opinion was overwhelming. And Dominic returned with full force, after the old master's will and my personal seal were made public. Bruno had no way out, clutching my urn day and night. He probably still hadn't given up trying to maintain his devoted husband image, hoping to salvage some sympathy from public opinion. Unfortunately for him, Alice appeared. She released a series of recordings. Most were drunken rants from Bruno. "Haven't I done enough? Look around Beijing, what other young master loves his wife like I do? In 3 years of marriage, I've only kept 3 mistresses. And those women? They're just toys. Ways to blow off steam. None of them dared, and none were allowed, to come near my wife or make her unhappy. Alice, you included. Let me tell you, all of you women combined aren't worth a single strand of my wife's hair." Alice asked, "If you love her so much, why sleep with me?" Bruno laughed. "Because there are things I can shamelessly do to you, but never to her. Because I can't bring myself to touch her that way. Because I can't stand seeing her stoop low to please me like you do. A wife is someone you love and respect. You're just a tool for release. How dare you even think you can be compared to her? Such deep devotion, wasn't it? Yet how bitterly ironic. But when I heard it all, my heart was already completely numb. The recordings Alice leaked never truly went viral. Even if you searched online, you wouldn't find a trace. I could faintly guess why. Probably Leo's doing. After all, if those recordings spread, I would once again be dragged back into the public spectacle. Nothing more than entertainment for the masses. Bruno's last shred of hope crumbled. His devoted husband facade collapsed completely. The goodwill he had accumulated with many of his business partners vanished overnight. Some powerful figures even blacklisted him publicly, vowing never to work with him again. Under mounting pressure, Bruno was finally forced to sign the papers. Song Yuan was bought by a mysterious buyer. The estate was quickly demolished and rebuilt. Everything from the past was reduced to dust, completely over. Leo personally flew across thousands of miles to hand me the final documents. It was at sunset, the blood-red light spreading over the ocean. Half the river shimmered in cool blue. The other half burned crimson. I stared at the small certificate in my hands, and tears fell uncontrollably. I sat alone on the rocky shore for a long time, crying, until the sea breeze cooled the tear tracks on my face. And then, a warm jacket, still carrying someone's body heat, draped gently over my shoulders. I turned around. Through my blurry vision, I saw Leo's face. In the falling night, he stood there, calm and gentle, like his voice, quiet, steady, and reassuring. Chapter 16. A year later, I left that private island. I began traveling the world, checking off the dreams I had as a young girl. One by one, news from home still reached me intermittently. Bruno's situation had become truly pitiful. In Beijing, within his own family, there was no place left for him. He turned to heavy drinking and gambling. In the end, he squandered the last of his inheritance and fell deep into debt, barely able to breathe under the weight of it all. And Alice, the last time she appeared in public view, she had followed a nouveau riche businessman to the Philippines. It was said that the man already had a wife and children back home. Naturally, he couldn't give her any official status. But if she could set up her own life in the Philippines, perhaps there would still be a way forward. However, not long after, the businessman returned to China alone. Since then, Alice vanished without a trace. No more news of her ever surfaced. As for Song Yuan, reconstruction had already begun. The artificial lake was filled in, and the stones engraved with Song Yuan and all those laughable vows of eternal love were dragged away and blasted apart. Inside and out, the place was completely renewed. Only the characters, Song Yuan, carved above the main gate remained unchanged. The handwriting there looked strangely familiar. It resembled Leo's calligraphy. During the past year we spent together, I had picked up on a lot of little clues. But now, I had no heart left for love. I just wanted to live freely, like the wind, following my own path. I had, both openly and subtly, expressed my feelings and intentions to Leo. He was far too intelligent not to understand. And so, He had never crossed any boundaries or spoken any words. That would make me uncomfortable. Yet what Leo didn't know was, once, when I returned a book to his study, I accidentally knocked over a box. Inside that box were countless photos. Photos of me, the vermilion mole on the back of my neck, the shallow dimples at my lower back, the little brown mole near my heart, the crescent-shaped scar on my index finger. Each detail, carefully captured. Each memory, silently preserved. I didn't know when he had secretly printed them out and kept them. At first, I was quite shocked. After all, those emails were set to self-destruct after being read. I never intended to leave behind any record. But now, seeing these photos, beyond the initial shock and surprise, I didn't feel uncomfortable or offended at all. Maybe it was because Leo was simply too much of a gentleman, too courteous. So even if he had crossed a boundary in private, somehow it felt almost understandable. I didn't tell anyone. I carefully put the box back in its place, but I took all the photos with me and burned them before leaving the island. I sent him a message. I asked him to destroy the originals and all backups. Leo took a long time to reply. That must have been the first time he responded ungentlemanly to a lady's request. Helen, I'm really sorry about the photos, but is there really not even a single one I can keep? They are the only things I have left that are connected to you over these 6 years. I sat on the plane. The aircraft was about to take off. My cheeks were burning. I instinctively used the back of my hand to cool them down. Lowering my head, I stared at the screen, unlocking, locking, unlocking again, locking again. After repeating this a few times, I finally brought up the message screen and replied to him. Mr. Leo, you may keep the one with the scar on my finger. The others, you must destroy them. Leo responded quickly. As you wish. I turned my phone over, screen down, and ignored it as the plane was taking off. His final text came through. Helen, when can I visit you? Chapter 17. On the 10th anniversary of my mother's passing, I quietly returned to my country. The trip was arranged by Leo. The hotel I stayed at was also under his company's name. Leo said I was his very first client. The after-sales service was lifelong. Thinking about those photos he had secretly kept, I accepted this arrangement with a smile. The day I went to visit my mother's grave, Leo had already sent someone to the cemetery ahead of me. Over these years, Bruno did come every year to pay respects to my mother. As expected, this year he came too, but unfortunately for him, he wasn't even allowed to enter the mountain, let alone get close to her grave or meet me. As always, I stayed 2 nights in the mountains. During the day, I visited my mother's grave, tidying up the wilted flowers and clearing away the wild weeds. I stayed there until nightfall, then strolled back alone. Those 2 days, I thought about many, many things, and my heart was at peace like never before. A person's life is made up of countless choices. I paid a painful price for my youthful decisions, but I also gained a rebirth. I am not a saint, nor a god. I can't foresee whether every choice will be the right one, but at least, I have no regrets. On the day of leaving, I gently wiped my mother's photo one last time. She smiled so tenderly, so kindly. Even the wind passing by felt softened. I stood up, turned around, and saw Leo. During the long years of my wandering travels, he often asked me through calls and emails, Helen, can I come visit you? But I refused every time. It was only much, much later that I learned he had always been following my path. Going to every country, every town I had been to, he never let me know, never disturbed me. Are you planning to stay in the country for a while? I shook my head. No, not staying. Where are you planning to go next? Leo tilted his head to look at me, but I kept my eyes forward. With a faint smile on my lips, I want to go back to that little island for a while. Leo's steps halted slightly. Helen? I stopped walking, slowly turned toward him, smiling so warmly that my eyes curved into crescents. Mr. Leo, I wonder if your after-sales service includes this request? The sun broke through the high mountains, bursting through the clouds. Golden rays like scattered jewels fell into his eyes. And there, deep in his eyes, a smile gradually bloomed. Helen, from the very beginning, that little island was written under your name. Chapter 18. Bruno's state grew more and more unstable. During the 10th anniversary of Helen's mother's passing, he had originally planned to go personally to pay respects. But that day, the mountain was sealed off, and he couldn't even take a single step in. He heard it was because some important figure had come to mourn their family member. At first, he didn't think much of it, but later, when the fleet of luxurious cars left, he thought he caught a glimpse of Helen. The motorcade paused at the foot of the mountain for over 10 minutes. At first, Bruno only saw that mysterious and low-key air. Leo. Soon after getting out of the car, Leo personally helped a young woman alight. There were many bodyguards around them. Bruno caught just a glimpse, but in that glimpse, his heart almost stopped beating. He had grown up with Helen. They had dated for 3 years and were married for another 3. How could he not recognize his own wife? But everyone knew Helen had died in a tragic car accident. He had even seen her autopsy photos with his own eyes. Every scar, every detail, not a single error. Yet, how could two people look so incredibly alike? And how coincidental it was that she would appear on her mother's anniversary. A wild, terrifying thought sprouted in Bruno's mind. Helen must have faked her death to get revenge on him. In this world, besides himself, only Helen knew her body so intimately, so deceiving him wasn't impossible. Once this thought took root, Bruno fell into madness. He began staking out at Helen's mother's cemetery, then at the newly rebuilt Song Garden, staying whole nights there. Every place he thought Helen might appear, he went, but he found nothing. His mind grew worse and worse. He had nightmares every single night. In them, Helen came back to him, but not as the beautiful, gentle woman he remembered. Sometimes her body was scorched and incomplete. Sometimes she had a terrifying skeletal face, blood and tears streaming from her empty eyes, tormented day after day. Bruno finally, completely lost his mind. One day, while driving to evade debt collectors, he crashed straight into a highway barrier. He didn't die immediately. Instead, he was left a quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down, lingering in the hospital for nearly a year in agony. Before finally taking his last breath, no one came to arrange his funeral. After cremation, his ashes were left abandoned in storage, with no one willing to pay to bury him. And on the day of his death, far across the ocean, on a distant little island, the sky was lit up with fireworks that lasted the whole night. Under the bright, festival-like night, a handsome gentleman was leaning down to kiss the woman he loved. Between the crackle of fireworks, the sea breeze carried his soft whisper, "Helen, I have dreamed of kissing this red birthmark of yours thousands and thousands of times."